At the end of the year, Princess Black Moonlight. White cut black disease Jiao Guo, the second young master of the famous Su family, suddenly appeared with an angelic and romantic smile in the eyes of others. Only Su Deng knew that the abandoned child she had picked up was a madman obsessed with his elder sister. The camphor tree falling into the water, the studio necking, and the broken bones in the stairwell. These are her revenge for the intruders. In the ward, the young man with watery eyes and a pale face arched the woman's warm shoulder blades. Any wish you have, Amo will fulfill it for you. He attached himself to his ear, his breath ambiguous, even if you want me to die. She thought he would always be the crying follower. Until the gentle and elegant bamboo horse proposed with flowers, the dark boy caught her blush and joy in his eyes. The gentle sheepskin tore open, and inside the wedding room, the man pinched her waist from behind. I broke my hands and feet, abandoned my way back, and wanted to save you from fire and water. I held you to the altar, why can't you ever see me? On the day when his background was revealed, it was snowing heavily in Luoan City. Su Deng, holding his mother's portrait, kowtowed step by step in front of the long street of Lanin Temple, hoping to relive the old days of his childhood when his parents went on blind dates and his youth fell in love with each other. Guo draped his woolen jacket over her and said, "You can play with anything, but you can never leave me." By chance, she grabbed Jiang Zhou's hand and fled abroad without hesitation. 3 years later, she returned to China to offer condolences to her adoptive father. But in front of the portrait full of flower wreaths, I once again saw the tall and cold man. "Sister, where else do you want to escape to?" Reading instructions. Female leads, evil women, and abusive men are not good people. It's probably a story of a milk dog turning black and losing love due to illness. Keywords of the novel. Taming evil dogs with no pop-ups, Taming evil dogs. Download the complete collection of TXT, and read the latest chapter on Domesticating Evil Dogs. Chapter 1. Preface Eden. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Preface. Eden. As the sun sets in the western mountains, red and hot blood floats in the sea of clouds, soft and drowning the gradually cooling and burning soul. The man is tall and standing in front of the floor mirror. He fastened the buttons on his sleeves, put on a deep blue suit jacket that had been left on the back of the chair for official duties, patiently smoothed out every wrinkle on the delicate fabric, and then picked up the red gift box that had been waiting on his desk and pushed open the office door. Mr. Gu. A woman with dark brown curly hair held a document in her hand and her black eyes flickered like glitter when she saw him. She helped her glasses with a pen and smiled, "Are you going on a date?" Other busy people at the workstation also turned their heads. The man walked over, and everyone looked down at the computer as if they had seen a ghost. Only Nye Nanji was still jokingly looking at him, and the two of them chatted for a few moments before parting ways. Nye Nanji looked at the man's cold and elegant back, and his mind recalled what he had just said. "Well, I'm going to meet an important person." When she landed as a senior executive of the Su family, he had already become the CEO of the group, and it was not appropriate to say, old, because he was the youngest person in power she had ever seen in this position. They have known each other for nearly 3 years, and Nye Nanji only knows that he is a lonely and workaholic who relies on high-rise buildings and plays with politics. If his abnormal early departure from work a few days ago can also be attributed to fatigue, then today she couldn't help squinting her eyes and chewing on those few imaginative words. An important person. The black Bentley left the dim twilight behind and drove towards the suburbs. After climbing the winding Sheep-in-Teston Road, it stopped in front of a beautiful and exquisite small Western-style building that looked like a flower house. Everything is quiet, and occasionally one can hear the rustling sound of the wind passing through the treetops. The hidden black cicadas chirp hoarsely, burning the last breath of life in the ashes of late September. The man walked up to the yellow-brown wooden door, and a small black machine on the door immediately lit up, like a strict sentry, starting to check the visitor's fingerprints, voice, face, and iris. A green prompt appears, and after entering a complex password, the door finally opens. Darkness enveloped the cold air, startling the carefree vegetation outside in the sun mist. This is a garden that resembles Eden, with a golden exterior wrapped in a prison-like steel inside. And now, obviously, its warden has returned. The leather shoes stepped over the curved staircase, and the man stood at the door of a room on the second floor, pressing his fingerprint again. The room was dimly lit, with even the wind passing by sinking. The man's eyebrows silently furrowed as he did not see the slender figure that was haunted by his dreams in the first moment. He put on his shoes, closed the door, and calmly placed the gift box on the table. "Are you playing hide and seek with me?" With a light smile, his gaze scanned the room and finally locked onto the prominent silk fabric by the window. "Let me guess, are you thinking now, don't that crazy dog find me, A deep voice was deliberately raised, imitating the delicate voice of a little girl. However, just as his big palm touched the curtain, the man suddenly turned around and rushed towards the door with a swift step, pressing the small figure that had emerged out of thin air against the door and holding it in his arms. The door that had just opened a gap was heavily closed. "Sister, where else do you want to escape to?" A heavy breath fell on his face, and Su Deng's watery eyes stared at his face close by. His dry and cracked lips pursed tightly, and his slender arms lifted, slapping the person in front of him with force. The man didn't even have a crooked head, kissed the corner of her mouth, reached out to smooth out the slightly messy hair at her temples, and tidied up the shoulder straps of her white dress that slightly slipped. "You have to cough up, how long will you keep me locked up?" One day, without water, the woman suddenly raised her voice, causing her to cough violently. "Wrong, sister." The man gently stroked her back. "There were a lot of things going on at the company today, so I came back late." He carried her to the soft big bed in the center of the room, wrapped her waist from behind, and held a cup in the other hand, feeding her water. The woman's throat, which was cut like a knife, was slightly comforted by the sweetness and smoothness, and she distanced herself from him. "Gumo, it's been 3 days. To be precise, it's 2 days, 16 hours, and 4 minutes. Jiao will soon find this place." "Oh." Gumo's hand paused and placed the water cup by the bedside. A light of joy in his eyes suddenly sank like weak water, and his fingertips twitched, teasing her pink lips. "Are you so confident in him?" He curved his brows and eyes, his seductive eyes flashing with jealousy. "Everyone knows about my return to China, and I am the future daughter-in-law of the Jiang family. Guess how long it will take for them to rescue me? Or, can you think about how many years of imprisonment you will have?" The woman bit hard on the knuckles in the entrance of the intruder, with her teeth tightly clenched, as if she was about to bite off the section that had been inserted. Gumo's face showed pain, but the next second, his other hand reached into the white skirt and swam upwards, with a soft touch transmitted from his fingertips to the cerebral cortex. For a moment, happiness immediately gained the upper hand over that beautiful face. The water vapor in his eyes became blurred, and he was still calling her sister, asking her to exert more force. The woman held his hand and gave him a disgusted look. Her pink lips opened and closed, and she began to use the most embarrassing and vicious words in the world to greet the ancestors of the person in front of her for 18 generations, attempting to have an improper relationship with the latter. Gumo's mouth curved with a hint of seductive smile, lifting her down into the snow-white softness. The scolding came to an abrupt end, and the woman had a momentary difficulty breathing. "Don't worry about the deceased, my suggestion is," he leaned towards her pink ear, "Sister, why don't you just play with me? Get lost." Before he could finish speaking, he placed a circle of bloodstains on his index finger close to her lips. The woman turned her head, but was forcefully grabbed by the back of her head. In an instant, accompanied by a hint of bitterness, a thick and fishy rust filled the nose. In the dim twilight, the woman's pale face and bright thin lips formed an extreme contrast. Gumo satisfactorily curled the corners of her mouth and gently caressed her skin, which was fragile and fragile. It looks really nice. Look good at your father. The huge shadow was instantly suppressed, and her big palm held onto half of her face, like picking up a broken flower in a pouring rain, unable to dodge and fragile. The breath was taken away, and the woman frowned in pain. Crazy is like a rainstorm, and will not rest until death. For a long time, the two parted ways. The woman gasped for breath in a low voice and finally roared, "You ambitious and greedy dog. The entire Su family is under your feet now. Are you satisfied? What else do you want now?" Guemo casually shook his head and said, "What do I want? Sister wouldn't know." Suddenly, the raging anger subsided, and Su Deng stopped struggling. "You let me go, just remember my past love." "Su Deng, how dare you mention it to me?" Suddenly angry, Su Deng couldn't help but close her eyes. Soon, she felt her cold fingertips caressing her eyelids. "Sister, don't say whether these are good or not. Amo can't listen to this. Crazy person." Su Deng opened her eyes and looked at the person in front of her, who suddenly turned from anger to laughter. She turned her head and her gaze remained cold. "Guemo, do you still consider yourself a child and just grab what you want? Su Tanma is really blind. He took in you too, a mother and son with a wicked heart." She sneered, as if thinking of something, and the more she spoke, the more anxious she became. "He's dead now, why haven't you died yet? You should have died in that dirty alley on that rainy day. You're still the same as before, calling me to die whenever you're unhappy. But I know, my sister can't bear to part with me." "But..." Guemo collided with the tip of her nose, her slender hand caressing her soft belly, her breath unstable. "There's a sentence you said wrong. When I was a child, I didn't dare to do this to you. Instead, I longed to hold you and worship you as a deity. If you wanted me to live, I would live, and if you wanted me to die, I would die for you. But later on, I found out that this didn't bring any benefits, and instead made you run away with other wild men. Didn't you just ask me what I want? Sister, I don't want much. This time, leave yourself to me." There was a throbbing pain in her waist, and Su Deng's heart instantly sounded an alarm. She struggled with both hands and feet. But it was a drop in the bucket, and Guemo smiled and pulled off her tie, tying her hands to the bedside. Immediately after, he got out of bed and elegantly opened the red gift box on the table. The sound of steel colliding with the lock ring echoed in the dimly lit room, with lingering sounds. Guemo smiled and walked back towards her. At the moment when his gaze touched the object in his hand, Su Deng's eyes widened uncontrollably, as if the dying person saw the death god approaching step by step, dragging a winding cloak and holding a blood sickle like a moon. "No." She shook her head in terror. "Sister, you don't know how much I like you, but you always want to leave me. You always just give up on me. When can you be better behaved and stay by my side forever? Are you crazy?" Su Deng stared at the bed, shrinking his legs, but was pulled over by Guemo. The cold object trapped his soft skin. If someone looks at the Nanling mountain from a certain direction with excellent eyesight, he will see a woman with long hair and white skirt in the French window set off by the forest, bending her legs at the moment, and a tall man kneels down in front of her, like a wild animal crawling on the ground, admiring the saint to be sacrificed. The woman's body trembled, but she couldn't take a step back because her ankle, exposed to the air, was a sturdy iron chain of moderate size that tightly trapped her, and it was now stretched to its limit. Deep magnetic laughter spread in the hazy light. Gumo seemed to be admiring a delicate artwork. "It's really beautiful." He hugged her again and said, "Sister, we need to slowly calculate the previous accounts. We can't just pass by like this, okay?" As if there was no need for a response, he continued to murmur. "From now on, from your soul to your flesh and skin, every place can only be mine. Sister can only be mine." A sigh fell in his ear, and Su Deng's widened pupils were gradually shrouded in despair. She closed her eyes and flashed through her mind the shattered memories of the past 20.5 years. She remembered the roaring rainy day and the muddy boy lying in the rain. If only he hadn't been saved. Su Deng felt that his consciousness was gradually sinking into a deep abyss. If she hadn't walked into that alley, there wouldn't have been anything behind her. Su Tanma wouldn't have married Gu Shuhui, and she would never have touched the dirty truth. She wouldn't be imprisoned by her nominal stepbrother in this desolate world like now. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Blood Steps. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Blood Steps. The scorching sun in September is scorching, and the freshmen reported by H University today are already sweating profusely under the sun, dragging heavy suitcases. The welcoming senior students stopped and looked at the distance, gathering together to discuss something in the distance. This year, Gu Mo, the genius top scorer who was admitted to the Capital B University with the top score and reported by various TV stations in Luoan, unexpectedly appeared at their school. An ordinary and low-end double non-university. There are many rumors about him. For example, when he took the college entrance examination, he was still an unknown sophomore student who often didn't come to school. For example, he was often seen walking side by side with Li Yangyang, the flower of the art department of B University, outside the school, with intimate behavior, and had long been rumored to be a talented and beautiful person. The handsome and extraordinary young man on TV is now sitting in a wheelchair, closely following a girl. The girl walked with her chest hugged, her eyebrows and eyes cold, her face delicate, and beautiful like a white porcelain doll. There is a woman next to her who carefully holds an umbrella for her. They walked extremely fast, leaving only Gu Mo to control the wheelchair and follow behind step by step. As if he didn't mind, he let people throw exploratory glances at him, always smiling obediently and politely. Mr. Gu. Hu Meiwan spoke with some embarrassment. What do you care about? Su Deng glanced impatiently at the back and quickened his pace. Did I force him to come? He's disabled. If it weren't for him, their group wouldn't be so eye-catching, like being watched and discussed as a monkey show, and she felt very uncomfortable now. But before leaving, the master and madam told you to get along well. Who mama? Su Deng pouted, they're not here now. If you don't tell me, who would know? What's more, like his mother, the disabled likes crying and pretending to be kind. Since he wants to play the role of sister-brother blind date. Su Deng turned back again and turned his blade's gaze towards the person sweating profusely in the wheelchair behind him. Then I'll see how long he can hold it, he said 5 minutes later, in the lobby on the first floor of the dormitory. Hu Meiwan dragged her suitcase to the registration office, while Su Deng fanned her hand and watched with interest as the person outside the door was tripped by the stairs. The toxic sunlight cascaded down like a waterfall, and Gu Mo's face bathed in it, becoming increasingly fair and almost transparent. People often pass by, but they are already burdened with a heavy burden, hungry and tired. Most of them only leave a few sympathetic glances at him before leaving. A ladder without a slope, although not many levels, is enough to make a person who has just experienced a calf fracture and needs to use a wheelchair for transportation stagnate. Suddenly, a small tricycle with the words, "Express Delivery," drove over. Perhaps it was too close, causing Gu Mo's wheelchair to trip and he fell heavily onto the stairs. Screams came, and people gathered around the entrance of the dormitory. The crowd trying to enter the building from behind was blocked, and in an instant, there was no water flow. What are the people in front of us doing? Can we make way? Hurry up, I have something urgent to attend to. Don't waste my time. Immediately afterwards, the surrounding crowd quickly dispersed. Su Deng instinctively withdrew her steps in an instant. She saw the empty space in the center of the sea of people, and Gu Mo was lying there. His gentle gesture of refusing to help remained in mid-air. The steps were covered in dust, and he propped himself up in a small pool of dark red liquid. He looked up at her inside, his pale face tinged with a heart-wrenching smile, as if saying, "Sister, you must be satisfied now." Su Deng snorted coldly, grabbed Hu Meiwan who was about to turn around, and walked towards the elevator. Her dormitory is on the 3rd floor, and the other 3 people have already arrived. Even a girl who has already been tidied up asked if she needs any help. Su Deng bit on the straw of the milkshake, shook his head, and sat bored under the bed, continuing to swing his legs. She tossed and turned all afternoon, and as evening approached, she was already a bit hungry. "My name is Jiao Sini, you should be Su Deng," the girl said again. Su Deng nodded, and Jiao Sini seemed excited. "You look so beautiful. Is that ant on the bed your mother?" "Miss, the position of this bedside table is too unreasonable. I just tried it out and it's easy to bump into your head. Can I take it off for you?" Su Deng responded with a sound. Suddenly, a surprised expression appeared on Jiao Sini's dark face, and she awkwardly said, "So it's your aunt." Su Deng began to urge Hu Meiwan, who comforted her and said it was fast. After a while, the other 3 stood up and gathered together to discuss the class meeting at 6 p.m. in the evening. Just as they were about to leave, the open door that had not been closed suddenly opened, and everyone looked around. I saw a young man sitting in a wheelchair, with white teeth and red lips, a face like a crown of jade, and curled eyelashes adorned with morning mist like starry eyes, capturing people's hearts and souls in the blink of an eye. He was originally a tall and gentle young master, but the thin blanket covering his legs and the slightly red bandage on his left arm made him look like a fragile and beautiful glass ball. The 3 of them looked at each other. Lu Yao Yao was the first to speak. "Hello, may I ask for your help?" Gu Mo looked at her, and in the moment he met her, the latter couldn't help but look aside, with a hint of shyness in his ears. With a gentle curl of his mouth, he said, "Uncle Chen, come in." The 3 of them finally saw that there was a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes behind him, carrying a bag in his hand. However, the young man's radiance was too bright. Despite sitting, his naturally ethereal demeanor bloomed like a night mist, silently attracting all the attention. Chen Bin divided the items in the bag among 3 people. Just as they marveled at the exquisite packaging of the long yellow box in their hands, Gu Mo controlled the wheelchair and walked towards the 3rd table inside. When Su Deng saw him, his feet swaying in the air stopped and his eyebrows furrowed. "The school doctor asked me to stay and observe for half an hour, didn't you wait long? You must be worried about me." Gu Mo smiled and reached out to gently tuck her hair from her temples behind her ear. Then, he bent down and picked up the socks on the ground, which were arranged in all directions. He wrapped his palm around her feet and put them on for her. Finally, after tying the shoelaces into a beautifully shaped bow, he sat up straight again. "Although it's summer, the temperature drops quickly at night, and you're so cold that it's easy to catch a cold." While Shen Meng and Lu Yao Yao were quietly discussing the value of the singing Emperor Fan Haiqiao in their hands, Jiao Sini had already joked, "Su Deng, your boyfriend is really kind to you. He even gave us chocolate." "Thank you." Gu Mo smiled at him without refuting, a small gift is not a sign of respect. In the scene in front of him, even with his thoughtful gesture just now, Su Deng was about to spit out his dinner the next night. She said coldly, "This is my brother." "Ah, really?" Lu Yao Yao was surprised, but a hint of joy couldn't be concealed in her eyes. "I mean, even a partner can't be so considerate. It turns out they're family." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Wandering Dreams. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Wandering Dreams. The 3 of them started laughing, and Gu Mo's face changed for a moment. He then regained his composure and gently reminded them of the class meeting. Only then did the 3 of them wave goodbye hastily. Hu Meiwan got off the bed, and Chen Bin timely handed her the phone number that had already been dialed. "Madam called and said I have something to ask you." Hu Meiwan saw the number and didn't suspect he was there. The two of them went outside. When leaving, Chenbin kindly closed the door. In an instant, Su Deng felt the empty dormitory become crowded. She stood up, but Guemo directly grabbed her hand. Isn't it true that we are relatives? Why does my sister have to leave as soon as she sees me? Guemo controlled the wheelchair to move forward slightly, and her injured legs caught one of her calves in the middle. Does older sister hate me so much? Her tone was innocent as if she were a child questioning the existence of angels. Su Deng sneered and shook off the pliers in his hand. Relatives. Do you also deserve it? Just give me some steps and come down, right? Well, I really don't deserve it, and I really don't want to be your younger brother. Guemo rubbed the remaining warmth on his fingertips. What's good about younger brother? He just watched you being snatched away by someone else. Su Deng widened his eyes in disbelief. In the past, how could Guemo dare to talk to her like this? 6 years of companionship, one day I was not respectful to her, treating her with care, never daring to step over the thunder pond, afraid of making her unhappy. Since when has it changed? Becoming afraid to have that filthy thought about her, even openly playing with her in the mouth. Do you know what you're talking about? Su Deng said with difficulty. Guemo looked at the complex expression on her eyebrows and eyes, as if only then did he realize that he had said the wrong thing. He suddenly felt anesthetized, and the wound on his left arm was bleeding again, but this time it made all his limbs ache. It's my fault. The sun was too bright today, and my head was sunburned. My sister didn't even come to see me, that's why. Seeing her not speaking, Gumo's heart was scorching. Almo said the wrong thing, sister, don't be angry. Almo was wrong. He went to pull at her hem, but Su Deng avoided it with disgust. Guemo, you need to remember your identity. Since the day your mother brought you to the Su family, there have been some things that you have lost forever. I know. Su Deng's shoulder shook and she smiled, saying, besides, I am now Jiang Zhou's girlfriend. What? Guemo grabbed the wheelchair armrest tightly. Have you agreed to his confession? Yes, it was during the days when you were hospitalized and unconscious. Why? Xiaojiang, he likes me. Su Deng innocently widened his eyes, lowered his head and looked at him level, his mouth sweetly curled up, admiring the pain in front of him. Didn't you already know? He likes me so much, and he even said, I wish I could jump to the day of college graduation now. Guemo felt like a machine that had been out of repair for a long time, with a stuck throat and rusty iron spikes inside. Because Su Deng leaned in his ear, once he graduates, he can marry me. I will soon marry into the wealthiest Jiang family, and you can only stay with your destitute mother at the Su family's old house for a lifetime until you die. Do you think Su Tanma will give you this outsider if he doesn't give me the shares? I advise you, I don't even want to. After speaking, Su Deng giggled and walked towards the door, her delicate figure quickly disappearing. On the balcony, the last hint of scorching sunset vanished in the evening attire, and for a long time, it was not until Chen Bin's voice came to his ears that Guemo regained his senses. He suddenly felt a stabbing pain in his palm, and when he looked around, he realized that at some point, his sharp fingertips had already scratched his tender skin, leaving several wounds of varying depths. Blood flowed out from inside like a stream, coming from afar to watch his heartless banquet guests. The night sky was covered with starlight. Su Deng drew the curtains and collapsed on the bed exhausted, ignoring the laughter outside. Would adding him on WeChat so quickly make me appear very abrupt? Oh no, you can't, just say you're Su Deng's roommate and take care of each other with his sister at school. It's easy to keep in touch if anything happens. That's what I said, but will it make me appear too proactive? Zhao Sini was still egging on Lu Yaoyao, looking as if she didn't mind the big picture. Su Deng raised his voice and said he was going to sleep. The contact information was asked by Lu Yaoyao, and her evasive gaze and blush on her cheeks revealed her thoughts clearly. Su Deng didn't have much thought and didn't even blink before giving it to her. The dormitory quickly turned off its lights and fell into darkness. Su Deng felt his body gradually lifted by the gentle breeze, and his consciousness drifted into a fragrant garden. She dreamed of the woman with seaweed-like long hair, always holding her in her arms and telling her the story of the prince and princess always living happily together in the end. Mom, I know. The prince is the father, and the princess is the mother. And you? I am my mother's little princess. The woman smiled and kissed her forehead. Our lamp baby is really smart. The sunlight is gentle, jumping on the tender white cheeks, one falling on the eyebrows and eyes, the other falling on the corners of the mouth, like the shimmering waves in the water, and they are the free-swimming fish inside. In the next second, the warm sunshine tore open its disguise and turned into a sharp blade, causing Su Deng to shed tears instantly. In the icy and snowy world, she saw the person who was still holding her for a second, turned around, and walked into the wind and snow with a man holding hands. She shouted and called out, tears quickly blurring her eyes like an open embankment. She reached out and grabbed hard, not catching the red scarf floating behind her, but only catching a cold and piercing snow. The two figures gradually drifted away, and at the end of the story, even the dazzling red was drowned out by the overwhelming white. Su Deng woke up from a brief dream, sweating profusely. She grabbed onto the thin blanket tightly, and the lingering emotions in her mind were still deeply trapped in the fear of being abandoned. She originally had a beautiful childhood, where her parents loved each other and she was their only precious gem. But this sweetness came to an abrupt end when she was 6 years old. She only remembers getting lost at the amusement park that day, and when she cried and walked to the marshmallow stall, she saw Su Tanma standing there with a solemn expression on his face, his black eyes holding a severity she had never seen before. After that day, she never saw her mother again, and Su Tanma never mentioned this matter. She had no way of knowing the reason for Lu Manman's departure. She only knew that the man in front of her, who was solemn and silent, was completely different from her father, who had previously been gentle, smiling, and doting on her. Previously, Su Tanma never lost his temper and was gentle in his words and actions towards his servants. His every move and gesture were refined to the bone. Now, just because she casually mentioned her mother or accidentally knocked over a vase in the study, he would become furious and imprison her. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Red Scarf. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Red Scarf. In the past, he used to be busy with company matters and would come home even later, bringing a bouquet of dewy bouquets to his mother. He would sit by her bedside and tell old bedtime stories. Now, he rarely spends time with her on official business grounds, and even most of the time, they only meet once during dinner. From loving each other, to becoming strangers. Even though Su Tanma ignored her and remained extremely indifferent, Su Deng still held expectations in his heart. If a broken mirror can reunite, so can her home. Since Lu Manman left, Su Tanma has never remarried, which indicates that he still loves his mother. Perhaps he, like her, is looking for her. Their family will definitely reunite someday. Su Deng firmly believes in this. But 6 years later, a roaring rainy day shattered this waiting. The pointer crossed 5 o'clock, and the bell for the first day of junior high school and the splashing sound of the bell rang together. Su Deng, what are you looking for? Aren't you leaving so late? Qing Shueshue put away her backpack. Su Deng scratched his hair randomly and said, the cat I brought is missing. Qing Shueshue looked out the window, and occasionally white light flashed by, accompanied by a few thunderous sounds that shook the sky and earth, making people feel a bit scared. It's raining so hard outside, I'm sure it's rolling and I don't know where to go. Why don't we forget today? Rolling is the wild cat they raise outside, and they go to the back alley every day after school to feed it on time. Jiang Zhou beside her asked if she had forgotten to bring it. Su Deng shook his head and said, why don't you leave first? Rolling. Rolling. Su Deng ran into the rain curtain with a black umbrella, carrying her backpack in front of her, which contained a canned cat she had just bought in the supermarket. The umbrella belongs to Jiao. He came with her, and Qing Shueshue also went to another alley to look for it. Rolling. Su Deng shouted anxiously. After searching for an unknown amount of time, I finally heard a faint meow of a cat as it was getting late. Get lost, is that you? Su Deng followed the sound and finally saw the kitten next to the trash can, trembling with the rain adhering to its fur. Its dark green eyes shone brightly in the night, and when she came, she kept whimpering. She approached, and the next second, her eyes suddenly widened. Rolling was being held by a dirty boy as a gesture of gratitude, and it seemed to recognize Su Deng. It tilted its head and let out two low shouts. The young man was thin, with wet hair pressed against his tightly closed eyes, leaning against the wall. His small body curled up, and droplets of water slid down from his nose. In the summer, his clothes were thin, but he wrapped a tattered scarf around his cat, barely blocking the rain. Su Deng hesitated, she was just here to feed the cat. The boy's situation was unclear, which made her feel a bit scared. When faced with difficulties, one is fortunate enough to ignore them. She bent down and took out a can from her backpack, intending to tear it open and eat it on her own when she was hungry. His gaze drooped and landed on the scarf under the boy's chin. It's red. Wrapped around his neck a few times, the extra part lay behind him, spreading long and wide. Under the rendering of a heavy rainy night, it looked like a winding river of blood. Su Deng couldn't help but clench his palm. Meow, the night was silent, and only the sound of cats licking cans remained in the deep alley. Su Deng stared at the young man for a while, hesitated for a moment, and the umbrella in his hand tilted slightly towards the eating kitten and the unconscious person, isolating them from the cold rain. For the sake of him providing shelter for rolling rain. Su Deng silently recited in his heart. At the beginning of the sudden rain, the dusk mist shone into the alley, and fine raindrops draped in golden gauze smashed into the small puddles, like clusters of golden fireworks blooming in the mirror. Su Deng's slightly suppressed mood improved. She was a bit distracted and suddenly felt that she didn't dislike rainy days as much. Learning from the TV, she reached out and probed the boy's breath and forehead. Originally not dead, my forehead is so hot. She muttered and shook her hand. At this moment, the young man seemed to have a sense and briefly woke up. He vaguely opened his eyes and saw the girl in the rain soaked in sunlight, who was extremely clean. Did he die? So he saw the angel. He tried hard to reach out and reach for her pure white hem. Su Deng was startled by the boy's sudden action and immediately stepped back. However, she stumbled and slipped, causing her umbrella and backpack to fly into the air. The next second, she fell heavily into the muddy water along with her. Meow, the cat panicked and jumped away. Su Deng blurted out a vulgar sentence, she hates dirt the most. After finally getting up, the culprit closed his eyes and seemed to have fallen into a coma again. She kicked him in anger. Can it work for you? Finally, Su Deng called the driver at home and took the person back. Miss, are you going to the hospital? Su Deng wiped the water off his body with a cloth and said, Go to what hospital? Go straight home. That boy. Just call the doctor over to the house, she said impatiently. If she didn't take a shower, she would really go crazy. Yes. Memories are swirling around. And now sitting in the car complaining about her misfortune, she will never think of what will happen next. If I had known that one day Guemo would bring her mother into her home and isolate her like an outsider. She wished Guemo had died in the rainstorm. On the afternoon of the third day of military training, Su Deng saw Jiao on his way to the cafeteria. Dressed in dark green attire and wearing a military cap, she stood upright in the thick shade of the forest, gazing at the crowd passing by. Her thin lips pursed into a straight line, and she suddenly burst into laughter when she saw her. Before Su Deng could walk towards him, he had already rushed towards her, interlocking his fingers. "I miss you so much," he bent down and whispered in her ear. Su Deng pushed him and said with a smile, "There's still someone next to him." Jiao scratched the back of his head, and 2 red clouds quietly crawled over his ear. However, his grip on her hand became even tighter. The 2 families in Jiangsu are close friends, and they have known each other since childhood. They have never separated from elementary, middle, and high schools, and are childhood friends who are truly unknown and worthy of the name. At the end of August, the day Jiao confessed to her, Su Deng still remembers it as magical. Watching their elders grow up, no one knows that she and Jiao are 2 extremes. One is Wang, a child who has been late since childhood, often skipping classes to play games in internet cafes, and failing grades. The other is a 3-good student who excels in all aspects among his peers and is both excellent in character and education. No one expected that Jiao would like her. They only hoped that she wouldn't harm him, and that everything would be bustling and joyful. Despite being influenced by Su Deng's ink, Jiao still lived up to expectations and was admitted to the National Capital University. "B University. What are you looking at?" Su Deng asked. She swayed their hands together, and Jiao was afraid of her pain and didn't dare to hold them too tightly, always letting her little hand escape from his big palm. For eyes met, with a red face and a smiling face. However, after a while, Jiao tightened the warm fragrant soft jade again. "It's nothing, I just think H is really beautiful, with classical architecture and pleasant scenery." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Green Onion Wood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Green Onion Wood. Oh. Can we still compare to your school? If B is big. Jiao pretended to think seriously, "It seems like he's not as big as H." Su Deng rolled his eyes and was about to say that he was pretending to be a grandson and even being a good seller for a cheap price when he heard a clear and jade-like voice ringing above his head. "The only advantage that I can think of is probably that B University is also located in one city, which is not related to the location. The most important thing is that it is by your side, and I can take a 40-minute subway ride to get there." Su Deng laughed and scolded him for being numb, then was surprised by the length of time he took the car. "It's only 40 minutes, not far away. I think of you in my mind, flip through your photos on my phone, and time will pass." Jiao rubbed her head. "Yo, has someone been taken away? They used to be such a righteous person, but today they are so good at saying love words." The 2 of them walked along the narrow path to a secluded corner. Jiao looked around and hugged the person tightly. Su Deng wanted to laugh and avoid it, but he held on to the back of his head. In the next moment, the tips of their noses lightly collided in the slightly tipsy night. "I really miss you, it's always you in my dreams at night." Jiao sniffed the soft breath around him and closed his eyes. They haven't seen each other for 3 days. The cicadas chirping in mid-air in summer was hoarse, and Su Deng felt that it was an aphrodisiac. Otherwise, how could she be made to soften half of her body for no reason? Looking at Junyan in front of her, her heart was pounding in her chest, and she could even see his slightly curved upward eyelashes clearly. "Roma. I knew you were going to say this." Jiao smiled and opened his eyes. "That's how I think. What I say is the truth, and the truth is not cheesy." Amidst the gentle breeze, Su Deng saw his thin pink lips getting closer and closer to him. "Lamp, can I?" Su Deng didn't think too much, she just felt that she didn't reject Jiao, and she felt particularly novel about things between couples. So she stepped on his feet, hooked him around the neck, closed her eyes, and pressed him towards her. The green onion and woody aroma at the tip of the nose is getting stronger and stronger. But in the next second, a soothing piano sound suddenly came. Su Deng snorted and suddenly distanced himself from him, causing embarrassment on Jiao's face. He took out his phone from his pocket and rubbed her head while picking it up. Didn't you find it? Can you ask Zhang Yu? Su Deng heard a familiar voice, and shortly after, Jiang Zhou hung up the phone, saying that Gu Mo was looking for him to retrieve the project application materials. Coincidentally, her losing brother and Jiang Zhou actually got the same score in B University, and they both chose economics as their major. What project did they collaborate on? Strange, how could I not find the information I had placed on the table before leaving? Jiang Zhou frowned lightly. Is it really important? Su Deng asked. Jiang Zhou shook her head, with a reassuring smile at the corner of her mouth. She said she would take her to dinner first, and the project application would only be completed before 6:30 p.m. tonight, so there was enough time. Downstairs in the dormitory, the two of them were bored for a while. After watching her enter, Jiang Zhou hurriedly left and ran towards the subway. On the way, Jiang Zhou sent several more messages to Gu Mo, but no one replied. He remembered the inconvenience of his legs and feet, and his worries couldn't help but magnify. Finally, when Jiang Zhou gasped for breath and opened the dormitory door, he saw Gu Mo sitting in his seat, slowly flipping through a brown leather buckle notebook, with his wheelchair set aside. Zhang Yu, a roommate wearing headphones, saw him come in and immediately said that someone was waiting for him. He then threw himself into the intense battle of computer games. A strange feeling rose in Jiang Zhou's heart. He walked over and directly put away the buckle book. Inside was a diary he had written for dozens of pages, recording all the small things he and Su Deng had done since they established their relationship. I didn't expect Xiaojiang to be quite romantic, Gu Mo frowned and smiled innocently, without any sense of guilt from being accidentally caught. Jiang Zhou responded and asked if he had found the information, but Gu Mo shook his head. However, in an instant, he didn't need to worry, saying that he had memorized the wrong time. The deadline for submitting the project proposal materials is tomorrow noon at 12 o'clock. Jiang Zhou nodded and placed his notebook in the cabinet directly above the desk. Did you have dinner? Gu Mo shook his head and said, Did Xiaojiang go to H University to find my sister? Well, these days I've been too busy to accompany her even on the first day of school, Jiang Zhou said with a hint of happiness on his face. My boyfriend is not doing his job well, so I'll definitely spend more time with her in the future. He recalled the scene at the end of the small forest, and the next second, he met the expression on Gu Maden's face. He asked him gently if he was hungry and if he wanted to take him to dinner. Gu Mo agreed, and Jiang Zhou helped the person onto the wheelchair. In the elevator, Jiang Zhou asked about his leg injury. Gu Mo suddenly laughed and said that it was left by someone important in his heart. Jiang Zhou couldn't help frowning as he chewed on these words. He vaguely remembered that Su Deng had told him that Gu Mo had accidentally fallen off the second floor of his home. By the way, Xiaojiang, haven't you kissed my sister yet? Jiang Zhou didn't expect him to ask so directly. He shook his head awkwardly, but the person in front of him laughed even happier. During dinner, the conversation between the two naturally revolves around Su Deng. Gu Mo appeared very enthusiastic and took the initiative to tell him many small things about Su Deng's clothing, food, housing, and transportation. For example, Su Deng had a habit of drinking milk before going to bed, and he liked to turn on the water heater to 48 degrees Celsius when taking a shower. Jiang Zhou felt a bit ashamed because some of them didn't even know him. He smelled the sour smell in the air, but the next second he felt like he had a small stomach and chicken intestines. Gu Mo was Su Deng's younger brother, and they lived together, knowing these things was normal. Before leaving, Gu Mo unintentionally mentioned that Su Deng had been following many handsome guys dancing hot, and even picked up his phone to play one of the videos for him. Looking at the tall boy inside, dressed in short-sleeved, wide-leg pants, swinging his arms, twisting his waist, accompanied by explosive background music and even making crotch thrusts, Jiang Zhou's warm face froze at once. After dinner, Jiang Zhou pushed a wheelchair and escorted Gu Mo back to his own dormitory. Before entering, Guo said, Xiao Jiang, I am really happy that you can be with my sister. I long for a relationship like yours. Jiang Zhou smiled and said thank you, wishing him to find his beloved soon as well. In the hallway, the setting sun shone through the glass window, shining like gold into the weak young man's dark pupils, but it seemed like hitting a wall and could not penetrate deep. Thank you, brother Xiaojiang, for your blessings. I will definitely fulfill your wishes as you wish. After watching the person enter, Jiang Zhou stood in place for a while. For some reason, he always has a strange feeling. Su Deng, the stepbrother, has always been smiling and polite, but today he feels a bit strange. But he couldn't pinpoint the specific blame. But then, Jiang Zhou thought of himself being 1 year old, and that he would eventually become a family. In terms of emotions and reason, he should be more tolerant and take care of him. With this in mind, Jiang Zhou dispersed the hesitation in his heart. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Mr. Lau. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Mr. Lau H is large. The half-month military training soon came to an end, and Su Deng officially began his university courses. In the Chinese department, although she avoided the pain of learning advanced mathematics, those lengthy classic works still gave her a headache. She admits that she is rotten wood, she really doesn't dare to be interested, she can't even read a word. During class, there is a girl named Fan Yu in the class who often takes the initiative to find her and sits with her. Going back and forth, Su Deng knew that she was also playing a popular game recently. So during class, both of them sat together at the back, playing online in a row. Besides Fan Yu, there is also a boy sitting with them, named He Chenzhou. Su Deng had some impression of him. Not long ago, he hosted an ice-breaking activity in the class. He was handsome and humble, and his wheat skin color added a touch of publicity to his outstanding facial features. But Su Deng always felt that he was holding it up and speaking in a convoluted manner, unable to directly see the buttocks from his throat. He had a completely different personality from Fan Yu, who had a rectal appearance around her. Combined with his intentional or unintentional gaze on her, Su Deng doesn't like this kind of guy. Do you need help pouring water? During break, He Chenzhou asked them with a smile. Fan Yu was somewhat flattered and surprised. After pausing for a second, she immediately handed her purple water glass over and said, "Thank you." Su Deng looked up and saw that he was about to take her water glass. He immediately reached out to stop him and said, "Don't move." After seeing him stop, she continued to look at her phone and gestured for Fan Yu to start another round. In an instant, the atmosphere was somewhat subtle. Fan Yu immediately reconciled and said, "No, it's okay. You don't know yet, do you?" Su Deng doesn't like people touching her things. He Chenzhou nodded as if he understood, his eyes darkened as he looked at the person in front of him who looked at him like nothing, before turning around and leaving. Outside the door, Jiang Zhou paused and frowned as he focused on the man heading towards the boiling water. After a while, he withdrew his gaze and walked up to Su Deng. Upon seeing him come, Fan Yu immediately gave way to her seat with great eyes, and Jiang Zhou smiled and thanked her. "Take your place, Fan Yu. What are you waiting for? Oh, you're going to be beaten to death." Watching the big characters out appear on the screen, Su Deng looked resentfully at his side, but then suddenly his eyes lit up. "You're here." Jiang Zhou rubbed her head, silently put her phone into his pocket, then unpacked the hot milk tea he bought on the way, inserted a straw, and placed it in front of her. Su Deng's eyes curved into crescent moon, and he drank like a hamster. "It's a bit hot, slow down, it's all yours." The class bell rang quickly, and Jiang Zhou opened a brand new book for her, pressed the pen and handed it to her, which was self-evident. Su Deng pouted and lay on the table. Although Jiang Zhou had more classes than her, whenever she had free time, she would come to H University to watch her, accompany her in class, eat, rest, and take a walk caring as always, but once it comes to learning, it puts her in a particularly difficult position. In her third year of high school, when faced with Jiang Zhou's tutoring, she could still warn herself to keep pushing forward, but as soon as she entered university, she became like a wild horse that had run free, beginning to indulge herself without any hesitation. Seeing this, Jiang Zhou reluctantly pinched her face and skillfully took out the tablet from her backpack, taking notes for her. Su Deng sat up straight and whispered to him, "Brother Zhou treated me the best." Jiang Zhou lightly tapped her head with a pen and said, "No, hello, who's good to you, little lazy person?" The teacher who taught them was an old man in his 50s with gray hair. When it came to the Renaissance in China during the Song dynasty, he mentioned his glasses, flipped through his roster, and asked a classmate to come up and discuss their views on this viewpoint. Su Deng. The old and vigorous voice echoed through the classroom. For a moment, everyone looked back. Su Deng widened his eyes and was so frightened that even profanity jumped out. Just as he was about to ask Jiang Zhou what the problem was, he had already stood up. "Su Deng is so tall," said the old man. Suddenly, the whole class burst into laughter. There were a few other voices mixed in, and the old man listened in his ear for a while. He squinted and looked at the girl with her head lowered next to Jiang Zhou, slowly saying, "So it's Su Deng's family." The whole class burst into laughter again. The old man palmed down, gesturing for everyone to calm down and let Jiang Zhou start answering. Jiang Zhou bowed politely, pondered for a while, and then began to express his views in a flowing manner. The words fell one after another, but the old man's eyes became brighter and brighter. With such family members around, Su Deng must have learned this course very well. The old man asked Jiang Zhou to sit down. Amidst the teasing gazes and laughter of the crowd, Su Deng raised his eyebrows and pretended to be calm, taking a sip of milk tea. The bell for the end of class rings. Su Deng lay on the table, mocking the person who helped her pack her backpack. As soon as Jiang Zhou zippered up, he felt a chill coming from his chin. "You are truly my virtuous wife's helper, bestowing a brand and receiving numerous rewards." The people in the classroom had almost finished walking. Fortunately, Jiang Zhou leaned down slightly towards her direction and followed her words, saying, "Oh. How can the lantern reward me? I am not a stingy person, so I will reward you with 10,000 taels of gold." Su Deng pressed his index finger on his lips, "Jiang Aiqing, you don't need to be polite." Jiang Zhou looked at the pretentious expression on the little man's face in front of him, and couldn't help but laugh. He grabbed the hand on his lips and lightly kissed him. "Thank you, Emperor. But I wonder if you know something," he said as he approached again. "A moment in spring is worth $1,000. To me, 10,000 taels of gold is nothing but a fleeting cloud. It's better for the emperor to have his own appearance." "Okay, you're good." Su Deng suddenly sat up and twisted the arms of his predecessors below, but he laughed heartily and grabbed them into his arms. "What should I do? Lamp, I really like you." Jiang Zhou wanted to say something more, but felt another vibration coming from his pocket. He took out his pink phone, frowning slightly. Her phone was shaking during class. But before he could see who was on the screen clearly, he was snatched by Su Deng. "Who is it?" After lightly tapping her fingertips for a while, she put away her phone and said it was an insignificant person. Then she shouted that she was hungry and wanted to eat. Jiang Zhou naturally followed her and picked up her backpack with a smile. Along the way, a dark-colored avatar flashed by, gripping his heart tightly with those words. "I heard you like to eat this kind of sweet potato." After lunch, downstairs from the dormitory, Jiang Zhou carried Su Deng's backpack and held her for a while, reluctant to let her in. Su Deng enthusiastically opened the bedroom door, and as soon as he walked in, he saw 3 people standing together, discussing something with a mournful expression on their faces. Especially Lu Yaoyao, her milk-like little face wrinkled together. Su Deng's heart twitched slightly, and for some reason, he suddenly remembered the people who had always cared about her before. However, in the past few days, there has been no news on earth like evaporation. She walked over and casually said to Lu Yaoyao, "What's wrong? Is there any progress with Gumo?" Lu Yaoyao immediately pushed her and said, "What?" Suddenly, when it comes to this, which pot doesn't open and which pot is being picked up? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Great Adventures. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Great Adventures. After lunch, downstairs from the dormitory, Jiang Zhou carried Su Deng's backpack and held her for a while, reluctant to let her in. Su Deng enthusiastically opened the bedroom door, and as soon as he walked in, he saw 3 people standing together, discussing something with a mournful expression on their faces. Especially Lu Yaoyao, her milk-like little face wrinkled together. Su Deng's heart twitched slightly, and for some reason, he suddenly remembered the people who had always kept a close eye on her. However, in the past few days, there has been no news on earth. She walked over and casually said to Lu Yaoyao, "What's wrong? Is there any progress with Gumo?" Lu Yaoyao immediately pushed her and said, "What, why did you suddenly mention this? Which pot doesn't open and which pot?" Zhao Sini and Shen Meng immediately laughed, "Haha." Su Deng raised his eyebrows and said, "Then which pot of yours is open? Let me bring that pot open." "I haven't opened any pot, so don't mention it." Lu Yaoyao glanced at her. "Your words have made you deviate. I mean, teacher Sun, our class teacher, he wants to apply for teaching assistants." The homeroom teacher in the university was just a facade, and Su Deng casually put down his things and climbed onto the bed to prepare for his lunch break. Before going to bed, she opened her phone and deleted the chat box in Hichinzhou. The next second, Jiang Zhou's messages immediately popped up, one after another. The main idea is to say that he is almost at school, what class he will have in the afternoon, the hot weather outside, asking her to rest well in the dormitory, and that he has already started thinking about her. Su Deng replied a few words, and finally attached a cute emoji. The dormitory turned off the lights, and the 3 of them climbed onto the bed one after another. Lu Yaoyao, who was opposite the bed, was still chattering incessantly, shouting about how handsome the guy she saw at the street dance club today was. He was truly the handsome guy she had ever seen so far, who was so amazing. Zhao Sini joked, "Who knows? Last time you saw that senior graduate singing at the welcome party, you said the same thing." Shen Meng continued, "And last time, when you saw Su Deng's younger brother, you said the same thing." Lu Yaoyao lamented, "Oh, this time it's true. Trust me, okay. Hey Yao Yao, what's going on between you and Gumo? Look at my mention of him just now, you blushed. He bullied you." Su Deng said. Lu Yaoyao paused for a moment and denied, "There's nothing wrong. We're just talking nonsense, but he's quite aloof." Su Deng yawned and closed his eyes, wondering if the words Gumo and Gao Leng would match. That is to say, when chatting with Xiaoma's younger brother, our main focus is on companionship. For the sake of this girl's first crush on him, even if he is mute, we can communicate with him through sign language without any problem. What? Su Deng felt his consciousness gradually blur. It took her a long time to hear Yao Yao's voice again. "Su Deng, do you know how Gumo's leg was injured?" The words lightly fell on the cold tiled ground, like fallen leaves touching the water surface, and suddenly pulled Su Deng back to the ambiguous and mysterious night of August when he was about to fall asleep. You're the youngest, Luo Shaokong. What do you mean? Su Deng looked at the 3 in his hand with blurred eyes and hiccuped slowly and slowly. Approaching the start of freshman year, Su Deng saw her rotten father and his precious second spring on a business trip, and the loser also went to another city to sketch. Su Deng quickly called 3 or 5 high school friends to come and hang out at home, sitting on the ground in the hall and lying down. She was originally looking for some happiness that she indulged in with the support of her youth, but to her surprise, she has been losing from the beginning until now. A row of cans in front of him collapsed on the ground, and Su Deng's gaze wandered around, leaving only half a box of drinks left. She can't even drink a drop. Luo Xiaokong, who was in charge of dealing cards, scratched his head and smiled with a good temper, saying, "Fuck me, I'll drink for you next time." "Don't do it." Su Deng rolled his eyes and pointed his index finger askew at him. "You have the worst luck, and your cards stink. But stay away from me." As she spoke, she swayed and took a bottle of beverage, pulled open the tab, and was about to deliver it to her mouth. Su Deng. Someone next to her held onto her slender wrist, which had turned white under the large chandelier. Looking through the sound, Su Deng met a pair of distant and autumn-like eyes, with a slightly drooping curve at the corners of his eyes. His usual gentle expression had now been replaced by a plethora of worries. "Is it still okay?" As soon as the words fell, before Su Deng could react, the others sitting around them suddenly shouted, "Yo," and started teasing and teasing. Alcohol flowed through the hot blood, eating away at the rational nerves of the brain. Su Deng shook his head and looked at the handsome and gentle man in front of him through the dim light. He always likes to look at her like this, follow her trajectory, and be meticulous. Like a knight trained and loyal to his mistress in the ancient Middle Ages, his red cloak meandered like silk behind him, while his willingly lowered and proud head knelt on one knee and fell to her long sword. Immersed in this gaze, Su Deng's eyes flashed with many fragments of memory in an instant. From elementary school to high school, everyone inexplicably goes to the same school. Breakfast after morning reading, cover for skipping classes, tutoring, gentle companionship in internet cafes, piano classrooms, rolling, where you are where my eyes liner. The clear breeze was graceful, and the clouds were rolling and soothing. When he sat under the camphor tree and recited this sentence, she was as tired and confused as she is now, yet unaware of its sharpness. Su Deng knew that Jiang Zhou was her bottom line. As someone who is held high, she indulges in everything he gives, but feels lazy and unwilling to look deeper. "Don't worry, no matter what, there's still you around," Su Deng waved his hand. The people around burst into even greater laughter. "Is this a childhood sweetheart? I'm so envious of him." Li Xian, who was visiting the Su family for the first time, bit her lower lip and excitedly shook Qing Xue beside her. "I wish I had a bamboo horse as gentle and handsome as Jiang Zhou. By the way, didn't you know them a long time ago? Tell me, they used to be as sweet as they are now." The words flew far away, but Qing Xue never responded. Li Xian paused, withdrew her gaze, and then saw the latter's somewhat unpleasant expression. "What's wrong with you? Are you feeling unwell?" Qing Xue seemed to suddenly react, shook her head, forced her lips to curl, and said she was fine. Li Xian let go of her worries. Seeing that Su Deng was about to drink another bottle, she immediately interrupted and said that she would drink it bad later. Jiang Zhou felt heartbroken. She took the soda can from Su Deng's hand with a heart-wrenching expression, blinking her eyes and sincerely suggesting that she switch to a big adventure with sincere words. "I think this is good." Zhao Yingkai's deep voice fell to the ground like knocking a brick. Luo Xiaokong and he looked at each other with four eyes, seeing each other's fearless smiles in their eyes. Su Deng raised his eyebrows and said, "I choose a big adventure." Li Xian immediately opened her phone to randomly select, and in no time, she recited a great adventure mission. Please choose a man present to offer a kiss. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Misty Night. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Misty Night. Everyone laughed heartily. Only Qing Xue's eyebrows furrowed, her fingers clenched tightly, and in the midst of a burst of laughter and joy, she raised her voice and said, "Isn't that too good?" Luo Xiaokong glanced at her, put aside his playfulness, and immediately agreed, "I also think that Su Deng is a girl after all, why not change her?" Su Deng widened his eyes and pointed at himself with his thumb, who do you look down on? What's wrong with the woman? I always keep my word, Sister Su. After speaking, she looked at Jiao. The moonlight fell, and the whole body was full of youthful beauty. Gracefully, it stirred up the ambiguous string that was faintly standing in the air. The sound of the qin was like water, flowing into the heart lake and creating ripples. Just at this glance, Su Deng curled his lips and knew with certainty that Jiao would not refuse her. So she stretched out her arms, leaning forward with a drunken aura, hugging the man in front of her with a jade tree in the wind, closing her eyes and getting closer. Hey Shue, what's wrong with you? Why did you suddenly leave? Cluttering footsteps echoed in my ears. But she ignored it, and the heat surging in front of her was like a blooming poppy, making her reluctant to let go. Jiao was frozen in place like a stone statue. He wanted to get up and refuse, but his hard chest pressed against him. Faster than expected. Su Deng felt her lips hit a non-soft part, and she pouted uncomfortable. In an instant, cheers and screams from Zhao Yingkai and others echoed around. Life is short, enjoy it in time, and never stop until death. It turned out that kissing a man was the feeling, Su Deng thought to himself with all sorts of boredom. Just when she didn't take it seriously, a voice as cold as frost broke through the air, awakening all her fantasies. Sister, what are you doing? Su Deng opened his eyes, left Jiao's chin, and saw the air-conditioned man in front of the door, hugging his arm. Her beautiful eyes widened with mist, and the slight redness at the corners of her eyes trembled like a red peony blooming. Behind her, in the deep darkness of the night, she appeared exceptionally mysterious and enchanting. Feeling the imperceptible thrust on his waist, Su Deng slowly released the river boat and sat back in place. At this moment, she realized that Luo Shaokong and Cheng Shue had disappeared. I'll go, who is this, Su Deng? Li Xian exclaimed in surprise. Let's say you're here for the first time, Zhao Yingkai whispered while spinning his cards. This person is the cheap younger brother of Su Deng, the unknown second young master of the Su family. Ah. It's not personal. Have you heard of the shocking marriage incident that shocked the wealthy community of the Su family over a decade ago? Who knew that such a loving couple back then could slap them in the face? Zhao Yingkai spread out his palms and shook his head in regret. It's still Su Deng's father who is getting older and stronger. He can have a second spring even at the age of nearly 50, and his second wife brings such a big son. Li Xian listened, but her gaze kept falling on the man who had put down the drawing board at the door and walked straight towards her. In an instant, she heard her heartbeat amplifying several times in her ear. When it was only a few steps away, the person who seemed like a heavenly god holding a smiling face turned their toes and squatted down in front of Su Deng with a tall figure. Their well-defined fingers pushed the hair on the rosy cheeks of the woman's nose bridge. Su Deng felt itchy and shook his head to avoid it. Why did you come back? She took advantage of the situation and let out a hiccup, with her upper eyelids propped up. I caught the fastest flight and wanted to see you before you went to bed. Su Deng shook her head, her gentle words piercing her ears but not her heart. She only felt an alcohol attack, her head becoming increasingly drowsy. Sister, let me take you back to your room to rest. Everyone followed the two and stood up. Jiao saw Guemo embracing someone and about to leave. His thick eyebrows furrowed as he was about to speak, but Guemo turned around and nodded politely to signal him before calmly looking at him and speaking. Xiaojiang, my sister has a bad stomach and is prone to getting sick. You know this, you shouldn't let her drink so much alcohol. Get lost, I need you to take care of me. The words of discipline echoed above his head, and with the heat of his body, Su Deng suddenly pushed away the people around him. She stumbled for a moment, finally seeing who the complex and unclear double shadow was before her, and in the next moment, Pink Lip spoke up in front of reason. So it's you. She stepped forward and pointed her fingers at Gumo's face. People gather with people, and dogs sit at dog tables. You should be like your slut mother, see your own identity, know what to do and what not to do, and trash wants to meddle in my affairs. The sound of inhaling suddenly echoed in the magnificent hall. More and more unpleasant words emerged from Su Deng's mouth, and Guemo grabbed the finger that was causing chaos in front of him. With a slight force, a soft fragrance entered his arms, while an angelic and innocent smile remained on his lips. Sister, you're drunk. Pain. Su Deng muttered, trying to break the large hand covering his waist, but was grabbed by Gumo's backhand and held in the palm of his hand. The next second, Guemo grabbed her shoulder with the other hand and held the person who was struggling less and less in his arms, turning to look at Jiao and others. Sister is so drunk that I took her upstairs to rest. Please help yourself, everyone. The two of them walked towards the curved staircase not far away, their push-back and pull movements, as well as the man's drooping head, all showcasing a touch of intimacy. Jiao lowered his face and chased after him step by step, but did not let Zhao Yingkai hold on to him. Why are you going to join in the fun when there are two siblings? Su Deng doesn't remember how it ended, she only remembers that she hasn't had enough fun yet. The dark night brings a coolness different from that of the day. Her whole body was scorching hot, and she felt like she was being carried onto the soft bed. In no time, a damp towel was applied to her face, and her neck, arms, and feet were also taken care of with care. As if afraid of her coldness, a thin layer was carefully pulled over her shoulders. The scorching heat was comforted, and Su Deng comfortably tilted his head to one side, pressing his face against the soft fabric of the pillow. Young master, Miss must have been drunk. It's hard for you to rush home all the way. Why don't you let me take care of her? Hu Meiwan knocked on the door, feeling somewhat anxious for some reason. In an instant, the door was opened and Guemo leaned slightly. Hu Meiwan saw the room dimly lit by the dim light of the wall lamp, and the young girl sleeping soundly on the bed not far away. It's okay, sister has already fallen asleep. It's late at night, you go rest. Gumo's face was half drowned in the shadow, and he said softly. Hu Meiwan let go of her worries and respectfully responded, asking him to go to bed earlier as well. When I was taking care of my sister just now, I messed up the room a bit. You know she always likes to be clean, so I'll go back after cleaning up. Hu Meiwan turned around and left, seeing the closed door, but a strange feeling lingered in her heart. But the next second, she felt like she was overthinking. Young Master Gu's brotherly affection towards the young lady over the years was evident to her, even though the young lady had always treated him coldly. Hu Meiwan shook her head and went downstairs. Inside the room, Su Deng felt a bit noisy and rolled over, but soon she felt her upper body being held in a cold embrace. Sister, Amo misses you so much. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Black Circles Under the Eyes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Black Circles Under the Eyes. It's only been a month since I last saw you, and you're giving me such a big gift. It's really not at all obedient. Su Deng struggled subconsciously, but was fed warm liquid in his mouth. The fragrant and soft roux is the milk she loves to drink before going to bed. The body returned to the embrace of the bed, and this time, Su Deng completely fell into a deeper dream. The dark clouds cover the bright moon, and the fierce dog exposes its fangs. After an unknown amount of time, Su Deng felt like she was in the vast ocean, her body being pushed back and forth by the sea, and the piercing pain in her neck making her uncomfortable. Struggling to wake up with all her strength, Su Deng suddenly sat up, only to find that the dark room was empty, only the curtain falling to the ground in the distance floated gently with the breeze. She took a heavy breath, but felt her mouth dry and tongue dry. She turned her head and twisted her sore neck, reaching out to touch it, only to find that the left neck socket was damp. The heart suddenly jumped with force. What's going on? She went to touch her face again, but it was incredibly clean. Climbing up and turning on the light, Su Deng saw half a cup of milky white milk on the bedside table. Su Deng frowned and rubbed his shoulders, hesitating as he stared at the cup for a while before getting up and opening the door and walking out. Really, the lights don't even turn on. She groped downstairs in the darkness, wanting to go to the kitchen to find water to drink. But as he passed by Gu Mo's room, he saw the faint light and a few unclear cries inside. Didn't you go sketching from life? When did he come back? Su Deng rubbed his temples, feeling his brain in a paste. A light yet seductive voice came again. By a stroke of fate, she gently buttoned the door handle, stepped on the thick carpet in the room, and walked over gently according to the sound. The sound of water in the bathroom echoed, and the vague cries floating in the air became clearer. Su Deng seemed to realize something, and her cheeks immediately warmed up. She turned around and wanted to leave, but just as she was about to leave, she heard the words being shouted out in the panting voice of the bathroom. Sister. The thunderous shock caused Su Deng's eyes to widen, and the highly informative and even somewhat unbearable words that followed made her mind explode with fireworks. The dazzling light and scorching heat made her dizzy and froze in place. A few seconds later, the raging anger burned through the wilderness of Su Deng's heart. How dare he? Turn your toes and move forward softly like a cat. The bathroom door was ajar, and through the crack, Su Deng saw a picture that he would never forget in his lifetime. Under the misty shower of flowers, the man with a cold white body closed his eyes, his face flushed, and a heart-wrenching and enchanting smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, like a cherry blossom. His arms moved quickly, and he still passionately called out her name. As if scalded, Su Deng suddenly turned his back and pressed down on his heart, which was pounding uncontrollably in his chest. Nearly a minute later, she released her painful palm from being pressed against her nails, walked lightly towards the door, closed it, and returned to her own room. This night is very cold. Su Deng sat at the head of the bed with his knees in his arms, his gaze changing from initial confusion to a poisonous hatred. Dark thoughts are born like babies in a swaddle in the dark night. The next day, Su Deng, who had not slept all night, heard Hu Meiwan knocking on the door and shouting for breakfast. She cleared her hoarse throat and said she would get up immediately. Moving his stiff body like a puppet, Su Deng opened the door and saw Gu Mo walking out. Good morning, sister. Gu Mo raised a smiling face, seemingly in good spirits, and walked towards her as if nothing had happened. Seeing Su Deng motionless, a clear doubt rose on his beautiful face. The dark circles under your eyes are a bit heavy. Didn't you sleep well last night? Gu Mo pinched his eyebrows and reached out to rub her slightly darker lower eyelids. The sincere concern on his face made him look like a good younger brother who really cares about his elder sister. The next second, Su Deng waved his hand as he walked towards the staircase like air. Gu Mo paused for a second, then quickly caught up and followed suit, calling her wrongly behind him. Where did Amo fail to do well again and make my sister unhappy? Su Deng reacted quickly this time and immediately said, what if I say yes? Feeling flustered, Gu Mo climbed up to the corner of his eye. He wanted to grab her hand and get closer to her, but at the moment he touched her, he realized he was out of bounds and immediately let go. Don't feel uncomfortable, tell me, Amo will change soon, okay? Su Deng sneered and unusually grabbed his hand. Soft as cotton candy wrapped around his palm, a red cloud climbed up Gu Mo's ear at a visible speed. He remembered when he was 12 years old, in the backyard of the Su family villa, she also held his hand like this. Gu Mo shyly lowered her head, neither advancing or retreating, neither gripping nor struggling, with a look of letting her handle it. Sister. Seeing this, Su Deng felt nauseous and churned in her heart. She suppressed the urge to vomit, but her warm tone changed. Want to coax? Gu Mo nodded and made a heavy, sound, I am willing to do anything that can make you happy. As Su Deng's words fell, a genuine smile finally appeared on her face. She tiptoed up and climbed onto his shoulder, approaching his ear, saying, "Then you go die." After speaking, Su Deng's subordinates pushed hard, and the tall man in front of him fell down unpreparedly. At that moment, time seemed to be at a standstill. In Gu Mo's incredulous black eyes, there was a graceful figure of her standing in the sunshine. The arms were waving in the air, but the delicate person was getting further and further away from him. In the next moment, Gu Mo's body fell heavily like a boulder from a cliff and tumbled down the rugged staircase, accompanied by a few faint moans and the sound of something breaking. In Su Deng's commanding gaze, Gu Mo fell to the end of the staircase, motionless. She walked slowly down and saw a stream of blood slowly winding away from behind his head on the gray carpet. The gray and red colors are stunning. Gu Mo forcefully opened his eyes and looked at the woman in front of him with an angelic appearance. His lips twitched as he felt pain in the back of his head. Su Deng crouched down, still unable to hear clearly, and moved closer. A strong and feather-like aura echoed in my ears. "Sister. Are you happy?" Hu Meiwan, who came out of the kitchen carrying a plate, saw this scene and in an instant, the plate shattered on the ground. She screamed and ran towards Gu Mo. The surgery was relatively successful, but the severity of his tibia and fibula fracture needs to be taken seriously by your family. He also has a slight concussion, so please make sure to rest more in the next 2 weeks. At the entrance of the ward, a middle-aged man in a white coat explained to Hu Meiwan. Su Deng leaned against the wall and listened for a while, then the next second he opened the door and walked straight in. In the pure white ward, Gu Mo lay on the bed, his eyes indifferent as he looked at his left calf tightly wrapped in plaster. When he saw her enter, his pale face immediately wore a smile. "Hey miss." Hu Meiwan saw her movements and rushed in, only to see Su Deng sitting in front of the hospital bed, with Gu Mo smiling at her like a spring breeze. "Mom Hu, you go out first," said Su Deng. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Worry Silk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Worry Silk. What? You're actually standing me up. Su Deng paused as he paced. She stood on the balcony, her hands crossed between her eyebrows, blocking the dazzling sunlight that came in. Today is Saturday, with clear skies and comfortable clouds. It was supposed to be a great day for an outing. Starting from this Monday, Jiang Zhou agreed to take her to climb the Qianxue Peak. Sorry, the project supervisor suddenly arranged for all our team members to conduct research in a nearby county town. Don't explain, Su Deng frowned and interrupted angrily. Suddenly, a vibration came from the fuselage. Su Deng lit up the screen, only to see a portrait that would never flash for 10,000 years. Her heart in her chest accelerated uncontrollably, and she clicked on the chat box. In the next moment, a basin of cold water poured her from head to toe, shattering the inexplicable expectation that had risen in her heart. Su Deng stood on the golden floating balcony like a cold stone statue, and it wasn't until Shen Meng came in to dry clothes that she regained her senses and looked back at her phone. The call duration has jumped to 5.23, and she quickly picked it up. Lamp, are you feeling uncomfortable? Can you talk to me for a moment? I'm really worried about you, and I promise you will definitely go climbing the Qianxian next time. The person on the other side had a deep voice, revealing an undisguised anxiety. They kept talking fluently, but Su Deng couldn't hear them clearly. Her brain hummed, like a well-ordered gear inserted into a crossbar, the wood twisted to pieces, leaving thorns piercing into the flesh like mud, leaving her soul devastated. Behind the bloody scene, only one name emerged decisively. Su Tanma. He sent a message informing her that he would transfer to a country next month to attend university and arranged for her to work after graduation. Su Deng asked him directly what he meant, and Su Tanma replied without hesitation. If possible, I hope you can spend the rest of your life there and not return to the Su family. Blood flowed back, and Su Deng took an unsteady step back, his arm touching the dusty railing. She shouldn't have asked further, but at that moment, Su Deng retreated from the blatant and terrifying truth. She almost trembled as she typed the line. Why? Am I just obstructing your and that slut's eyes like this? The opposite side was completely silent, empty, with no further messages coming. Silence is the greatest contempt. For so many years, Su Deng thought that Su Tanma and her relationship had only become estranged due to the arrival of Gu's mother and son, but he never expected that Su Tanma would really not want her one day. What's wrong? You look so pale. Zhao Sini held a bag of hawthorn and sent it to Su Deng's position. Seeing her with a dead gray face entering, she couldn't help but ask. Shen Meng, who was practicing calligraphy in bed 2, and Lu Yaoyao, who was chasing dramas with a tablet in bed 4, all looked at her when they heard this. Su Deng shook his head and quietly climbed onto the bed. Lu Yaoyao crunched her potato chips and said, "Didn't you just wake up? Why did you go to bed again? It's noon, and you didn't even have breakfast or lunch. Did you have low blood sugar?" Zhao Sini nodded repeatedly, asking if she wanted to send chocolate to her. After a while, just when the three of them thought Su Deng was asleep, a small voice broke the silence of 326 sleep. "I'm fine." The usually arrogant and even domineering voice clearly faded away at this moment. Zhao Sini waved her hand to the other two and shook her head back to her position. It is said that the best way to escape reality is to sleep, but now Su Deng can't sleep no matter what. Su Tanma's indifferent back, Gu Shuhui's insincere smile, and Gu Mo's disgusting actions. Su Deng buried her head deep in the pillow, and she thought of Lu Man again. When she was in the 2nd grade of elementary school, she and a chubby guy in her class got into a fight and got their heads broken and blood flowing. The chubby guy could even throw himself into his mother's arms and cry loudly, but she could only follow Su Danma with a disheveled face, tightly gripping her clothes and listening to him apologize to him. Then, with a cold expression, she threw her in place and left with a cold sentence before turning around and leaving. "If you think I'm sending you to school to fight, then you don't have to go to this school." In front of everyone, as a child, she finally couldn't help but burst into tears. Even the chubby mother across from her couldn't bear it, took out a tissue from her bag, squatted down to wipe her tears, and even falsely criticized the chubby man for getting along well with her. The next second, the chubby man blushed and cried louder than she did. Looking back at this scene, Su Deng, who had grown up, believed that the behavior of the chubby mother might have been due to the generous compensation promised by Su Danmo. However, at that time, she undoubtedly felt helpless in this thin comfort. In the tearful gaze, the driver led her onto the car, but she tightly held onto the stranger's hand and refused to let go, crying and shouting to go home with her. Finally, Jiang Zhou, who hurriedly arrived, spoke kindly and comforted her by holding her into Mushang, rubbing her crying face for a long time. "I don't want you to hold me, you go, I don't want you. You're a good child, and we're not on the same side." Su Deng cried bitterly, his small fists pounding the boy's chest hard. Jiang Zhou was infuriated when he was spoken, and his comforting words came to a stop like wheels. He silently pursed his lips and only managed to hold back for a while before uttering a sentence. "What you want?" Su Deng cried and was tired, lying on his shoulder to rest. Jiang Zhou sighed and glanced at the person driving in front of him. He quietly put his hand at the corner of his mouth and looked at her with trembling wit. "Sister, you're wrong. I'm not a good child, I'm a bad child." "I don't believe it." Su Deng took a sniffle. "I skipped math class today," he said as he pinched her nose with a tissue. After wiping her nose, she used her little hands to comb through her somewhat messy hair. Su Deng was originally crying uncontrollably, but suddenly stopped. Jiang Zhoufu hugged her into his arms, and at that time he was not much taller than her. Su Deng had to bend slightly to bury himself. Jiang Zhou's childish voice echoed above his head, "Now you should believe me, right? Lamp, you can't throw my brother away." "I'll be very sad," he said again. Perhaps it was because of his presence that she was not left alone on the road to adulthood like a ghost. But this friendship could never withstand the regrets and gaps brought by Lu Manman's departure. On Su Deng's heart, there is always a missing angle. 3,000 troubles entangled, Su Deng sat up. At the moment when her cheeks rubbed against the fabric, she felt a damp sensation. Looking up, in the dim light, at some point, half of the pillow had already been soaked and darkened. She wiped her face hard and suddenly saw the phone screen next to her light up. The news push for the Go Club group, which she casually joined during the 100 Regiments Battle activity on campus after military training. Her fingertips were smooth, and she wanted to withdraw, but her gaze caught a glimpse of a rare face in the event trailer. Shen Yuqing, studying at the University School of Medicine, amateur 8th Dan. End of this chapter.